The pitcher shook in her hands. Wren tried to steady it, tried to force her fingers to stop trembling, but her body refused to obey. It never obeyed. That was the curse of being an Omega, the lowest rank in lichen society, born to serve and submit and cower before those stronger than herself, which was everyone. Everyone was stronger than an Omega. She crossed the great hall with her head bowed, keeping to the edges of the room where the shadows were deepest. The visiting delegation from the Northern Kingdom had arrived that morning, and the castle was in chaos. Servants rushed everywhere, preparing chambers and polishing silver and cooking enough food to feed an army. Wren had been assigned to the most terrifying task of all. She was to serve the Lichen King himself, King Kaelin of the Northern Realm, the most powerful alpha in the known world. 3 centuries old, they whispered, conqueror of kingdoms, destroyer of enemies. A man, a monster, who could kill with a glance and had done so many times, and Wren was supposed to bring him water. She reached the dais where the king sat, deep in conversation with her own alpha, Lord Brennan of the Eastern Territories. Lord Brennan was cruel, but he was a familiar cruelty. Wren had learned to navigate his moods, to make herself small and invisible when his temper flared. The Lichen King was an unknown quantity, unpredictable, dangerous. She knelt beside his chair, head bowed, and lifted the pitcher in offering. The water sloshed against the sides, betraying her fear. "Your Majesty," she whispered. "Water, if it please you." Silence. She could feel his gaze on her, heavy as a physical weight. Her heart hammered so hard, she was certain everyone in the hall could hear it. "Look at me." The command was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Wren's Omega instincts screamed at her to obey, to bare her throat, to submit, to do whatever this alpha demanded. She raised her eyes. The Lichen King was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. He was massive, broad shoulders, powerful build, the kind of body that spoke of centuries of warfare. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all hard angles and shadowed intensity. But it was his eyes that caught her. Pale grey, almost silver, and fixed on her with an attention that made her want to flee. "Why do you tremble?" he asked. The question was so unexpected that Wren forgot to be terrified for a single heartbeat. No one had ever asked why she trembled. No one had ever noticed, or if they had, they hadn't cared. Omegas were supposed to tremble. It was their nature, their weakness. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I am only an Omega. We are not steady." "Not steady." Something flickered in his expression. "Is that what they've told you?" She didn't know how to answer, didn't know what he wanted from her. So she lowered her gaze again and stayed silent, the way she had been taught. The king was quiet for a long moment. Then she heard the scrape of his chair as he leaned forward. "What is your name?" "Wren, Your Majesty." "Wren." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting the sound. "A small bird, easily frightened, easily crushed. Is that how you see yourself?" Her throat tightened. "It is what I am, Your Majesty." "Is it?" His voice dropped lower. "I see something different. I see a woman who crossed an entire hall full of alphas and betas without faltering, who knelt at the feet of a king she's been taught to fear and offered him water with hands that shook but didn't spill. That's not weakness, little Omega. That's courage." Wren's eyes stung. No one had ever called her courageous. No one had ever suggested she was anything other than what she appeared to be: small, weak, disposable, an omega to be used and forgotten. Lord Brennan, the king's voice shifted, hardening into something cold. This omega belongs to your household. Lord Brennan straightened in his chair, wariness creeping into his expression. She does, Your Majesty. A servant, nothing of consequence. Nothing of consequence. The king's tone could have frozen fire. And yet she serves at your high table? She must be valuable enough for that. She's obedient, quiet. She knows her place. Her place. The king rose from his chair, and Wren scrambled backward on instinct, nearly spilling the water. He was even larger standing, towering, the kind of presence that made everyone else seem smaller by comparison. Tell me, Lord Brennan, what exactly is her place? Lord Brennan's face had gone pale. He glanced between Wren and the king, clearly trying to understand what was happening and failing. She serves. As Omegas do, Your Majesty. If she has given offence, she has given no offence. The king reached down and took the pitcher from Wren's trembling hands, setting it aside with deliberate care. Then he extended his hand to her. Stand, Wren. She stared at his hand, scarred, powerful, capable of ending her life with a single blow. But there was no violence in his posture, no threat, just an offer, patient and unwavering. She placed her fingers in his palm. His grip was warm, steady. He drew her to her feet with surprising gentleness, and for a moment they stood face to face, the most powerful alpha in the world and the lowliest omega in the room. I'm going to ask you a question, he said quietly, low enough that only she could hear. And I want you to answer honestly. Can you do that? Wren nodded, not trusting her voice. Are you happy here? The question hit her like a physical blow. Happy. When had anyone ever asked if she was happy? When had her happiness ever mattered to anyone? I survive, Your Majesty. The words came out before she could stop them. Omegas do not get to be happy. We endure. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. His grip on her hand tightened, not enough to hurt, but enough to anchor her. And if I told you that you didn't have to merely endure anymore, that you could come with me to my kingdom, where omegas are not treated as lesser beings, where you would be protected, valued, safe? Wren's heart stopped. She must have misheard. She must be dreaming or hallucinating or losing her mind entirely. Your Majesty, I don't understand. I think you do. His thumb traced a circle on the back of her hand. From the moment you walked into this hall, something in me recognized something in you. My wolf has been restless since I caught your scent, demanding that I claim you, protect you, make you mine. The word mine sent a shiver down her spine. Not fear. Or not only fear, something else. Something warm and desperate and utterly foreign. You're saying I'm your mate. He said it like a vow. Yes, you're my mate, Wren, the one I've been searching for across 3 centuries, and I will not leave you here to be treated as nothing of consequence. Lord Brennan surged to his feet. Your Majesty, this is outrageous. She's my property. You can't simply— I can. The king didn't raise his voice, but the hall fell silent anyway. Every eye turned to watch as he tucked Wren's hand into the crook of his arm, positioning her at his side like she belonged there. I claim this omega as my mate. By the ancient laws of our people, she is now under my protection. Anyone who disputes this claim can take it up with me directly. No one moved. No one dared. Lord Brennan's face had gone from pale to crimson. His hands clenched at his sides, but he didn't step forward, didn't challenge. Even he wasn't foolish enough to fight the Lichen King. "Wren?" The king's voice softened as he looked down at her. "I won't force you. If you want to stay here, I'll respect your choice. But I'm offering you a different life. A life where you won't have to tremble anymore." She should refuse, should lower her eyes and return to her place in the shadows, where it was safe, where she knew the rules, where nothing ever changed, but at least nothing got worse. But she had spent her entire life enduring, surviving, making herself small enough to avoid notice, quiet enough to avoid punishment, invisible enough to avoid pain. And here was a man, a king, looking at her like she was worth noticing, worth protecting, worth claiming. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll come with you." The king smiled, a real smile, warm and fierce and utterly unexpected. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, right there in front of everyone. "Mine," he said, loud enough for the entire hall to hear. "She's mine now, and I protect what's mine." Wren's legs trembled beneath her, but for the first time in her life, she didn't feel weak. She felt chosen. The journey to the Northern Kingdom took 3 days. Wren spent most of it in a daze, watching the landscape change from the flat farmlands of the Eastern Territories to rolling hills and then to mountains capped with snow. She had never travelled more than a few miles from Lord Brennan's estate, had never imagined she would see mountains, or forests of ancient pines, or rivers that ran so clear you could count the stones at the bottom. She had also never imagined she would travel in a carriage lined with velvet, with furs piled around her to keep out the cold. "You're quiet." She startled at Caelan's voice. He sat across from her, watching her with those pale grey eyes that seemed to see everything. He had been patient with her silence, not pushing, not demanding conversation. But she could feel his attention on her constantly, steady and unwavering. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I don't mean to be. Don't apologize." His voice was gentle but firm. "And don't call me Your Majesty when we're alone. My name is Caelan." "I couldn't possibly." "You can. You're my mate, Wren, my equal, not my servant." The words refused to compute. Equal. Omegas were never equal to anyone. They were the bottom of the hierarchy, beneath betas, beneath alphas, beneath everyone. The idea that she could be equal to a king, to the most powerful alpha in existence, was absurd. "I don't know how to be equal," she admitted quietly. "I've never been anything but less." Caelan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Then we'll learn together. I've never had a mate before. I don't know how to be a husband any more than you know how to be a queen. But I'm willing to try if you are." Queen. The word sent a bolt of panic through her chest. "I can't be a queen. I don't know anything about ruling or politics or... You know how to survive." He cut her off, not unkindly. "You know how to read people, how to anticipate their moods, how to navigate dangerous situations without getting hurt. Those are exactly the skills a queen needs. Those are the skills of a servant, of an Omega trying not to be beaten. And they'll serve you well in court." Something hardened in his expression. "The nobility can be just as cruel as any alpha who raises his hand. The difference is they use words instead of fists. You'll see the strikes coming long before anyone else does." Wren didn't know what to say. She had spent her entire life viewing her Omega instincts as weaknesses, the trembling, the hyper-awareness, the constant assessment of threats. The idea that these things could be strengths, could be valuable, was so foreign she couldn't quite grasp it. "Why me?" she asked finally. "Out of all the women in the world, all the powerful alphas and beautiful betas who would have been honored to be your mate, why an omega? Why someone like me?" Kalen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something she couldn't name. "Because I've known powerful alphas and beautiful betas. I've known women who would have married me for my crown, my wealth, my name. Not one of them has ever made my wolf stir." He held her gaze, unflinching. "And then you walked into that hall with a pitcher of water and hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and something inside me recognized something inside you. I can't explain it better than that. The bond chose you, and I trust the bond, even though I'm an omega, especially because you're an omega." He reached across the carriage and took her hand. His grip was warm, steady, an anchor in a sea of uncertainty. "My kingdom doesn't treat omegas the way Lord Brennan does. In the north, omegas are cherished, protected, valued for their gifts instead of punished for their nature." Wren's throat tightened. What gifts? Empathy, intuition, the ability to sense what others need before they know it themselves, the ability to soothe, to calm, to bring peace to those around them. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "These are rare things, Wren. Precious things. In my kingdom, omegas are considered blessings, not burdens." She wanted to believe him, wanted it so desperately that her chest ached with it. But 23 years of conditioning didn't disappear in 3 days. "What if I can't be what you need?" she whispered. "What if the bond was wrong? What if I'm too broken, too weak, too—" "You're not broken." His voice sharpened. "You've been mistreated, abused, taught to believe lies about your own worth. But you are not broken. You are a survivor. And survivors are the strongest people I know." The tears came before she could stop them. She tried to turn away, to hide her face. But Kalen was faster. He moved across the carriage to sit beside her, gathering her into his arms with a gentleness that shattered something inside her. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to—" "Don't apologize for having feelings." He held her close, one hand stroking her hair. "You've been holding everything in for so long. Let it out. I've got you." She broke apart in his arms. All the years of fear and loneliness and quiet desperation came pouring out in a flood she couldn't control. She cried for the child she had been, cowering from raised hands, for the young woman who had learned to make herself invisible just to survive, for every time she had swallowed her pain and her pride and her hope because showing any of them was too dangerous. Kalen held her through all of it. He didn't shush her or tell her to calm down. He simply wrapped his warmth around her and let her grieve for everything she had lost and everything she had never been allowed to have. When the tears finally subsided, she was exhausted, wrung out, but something inside her felt lighter than it had in years. "Better?" Kalen asked quietly. "I don't know." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "I feel empty, but not in a bad way. Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long that I forgot what it felt like to put it down." "That's the first step." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "There will be more tears, more pain. Healing isn't linear, and it isn't fast. But you won't have to do it alone. I'll be here, every step of the way." "Why?" The question came out raw. "Why do you care so much? You barely know me." "Because you're mine." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And I take care of what's mine. But more than that, he paused, searching for words. Because I see who you could be if someone gave you the chance. I see strength hiding beneath the fear. I see kindness that's survived cruelty. I see a woman worth loving, even if she doesn't believe it yet. I don't know how to be loved. The admission cost her something. No one has ever. Then I'll teach you. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, soft and reverent. We have time, Wren. We have the rest of our lives. And I promise you, by the time I'm done, you'll know exactly how loved you are. She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons he was wrong about her, all the ways she would inevitably disappoint him. But she was so tired of fighting, of doubting, of bracing herself for pain that might never come. So instead of arguing, she let herself lean into his warmth, let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe he was right. Maybe she could be loved. Maybe she could be more than what she had been taught to be. Maybe, for the first time in her life, she could be enough. The carriage rolled on through the mountains, carrying them toward a kingdom Wren had never seen and a future she had never dared to imagine. And for the first time in 23 years, she didn't tremble. The Northern Kingdom was nothing like Wren had expected. She had imagined cold stone and colder people. A castle full of alphas who would look at her the way Lord Brennan's household always had, with disdain, with dismissal, with the casual contempt reserved for those at the bottom of the hierarchy. Instead, she found warmth. The castle itself was massive, built into the side of a mountain, but inside it glowed with firelight and colour. Tapestries depicting wolves and forests hung on every wall. Servants moved through the halls with easy purpose, and when they saw their king, they smiled, actually smiled, without fear or deference. And when they saw Wren, they bowed. Word travels fast, Kaelin murmured, his hand steady on the small of her back. They know you're my mate, my queen. I'm not. We haven't. She stumbled over the words, her face flushing. You're mine, he said simply. That makes you their queen. The rest is details. The rooms he gave her were connected to his own, a suite of chambers with a sitting room between them. The bed was enormous, piled with furs and silks in deep blues and silvers. A fire crackled in the hearth, filling the space with warmth. And on the table beside the window, someone had placed a vase of winter roses, white as snow. These are your rooms, Kaelin said. For as long as you want them, I won't. He paused, something uncertain flickering across his features. I won't push you into anything you're not ready for. The bond exists whether we consummate it or not. We can take as much time as you need. Wren turned to look at him. The Lycan king, the most powerful alpha in the world, standing in her doorway looking almost nervous. It was so incongruous with everything she had been taught about alphas that she didn't know what to do with it. You would wait? She asked. Even though I'm your mate? I would wait forever, if that's what you needed. He held her gaze, unflinching. I told you, Wren. You're my equal. That means your choices matter. Your comfort matters. Your desires matter. I won't take anything you don't freely give. Her eyes burned. No alpha has ever. She had to stop, swallow hard. I've never been given a choice. About anything. Ever. Then get used to it. He crossed to her, stopping just close enough to take her hands in his. From now on, you will always have a choice. In everything. Even in this. Especially in this. She looked down at their joined hands. His were so much larger than hers, scarred and powerful. Hands that could crush her without effort. Hands that had only ever touched her with gentleness. What if I don't want to wait? The words came out before she could think better of them. She felt him go still, felt the sudden tension in his fingers. Ren dash dash. I've spent my whole life being afraid. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Afraid of pain, afraid of rejection, afraid of wanting anything for myself because wanting just led to disappointment. But I'm not afraid of you, Kaylin. I don't know why, but I'm not. And I don't want to wait for something I already know I want. His eyes blazed silver, more wolf than man. You're sure? I'm sure. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was fierce and hungry and consuming, 3 centuries of loneliness pouring into a single point of contact. Ren gasped against his mouth, her hands fisting in his shirt, and he took the opportunity to deepen the kiss, his tongue sliding against hers. She had been kissed before, stolen moments in dark corners, fumbling encounters that left her feeling more empty than before. But she had never been kissed like this, like she was the center of the universe, like nothing else existed except the two of them. Kaylin's hands found her waist, lifted her effortlessly. She wrapped her legs around him on instinct, and he groaned against her mouth, a low, desperate sound that sent heat pooling in her belly. Mine, he growled. You're mine, Ren. Yours, she breathed back. I'm yours. He carried her to the bed. Later, much later, Ren lay tangled in the sheets, her head resting on Kaylin's chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her back, and she felt boneless, weightless, more relaxed than she had ever been in her life. I didn't know it could be like that, she murmured. Like what? Good. She tilted her head to look at him. I didn't know it could feel good. For me. Something dark flickered across his features. The alphas who touched you before, they didn't care about your pleasure? Alphas don't care about omega pleasure. We're not. She caught herself, old habits surfacing. I was taught that we're not supposed to feel pleasure, that our purpose is to serve, not to enjoy. Whoever taught you that was a fool and a monster. His voice was rough with barely contained fury. You are meant to feel pleasure, Ren. You are meant to feel joy. And anyone who told you otherwise was stealing something precious from you. She pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palm. You're angry. I'm furious. He caught her hand and brought it to his lips. Not at you. At everyone who ever made you believe you weren't worthy of happiness. At everyone who took from you without giving anything back. At every alpha who touched you without caring whether you wanted to be touched. It doesn't matter anymore. She shifted closer, tucking herself against his side. That was before. This is now. And right now I feel... She searched for the word. Whole. For the first time in my life, I feel whole. Kaylin pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her like he could shield her from every painful memory. I love you, he said. I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. But I love you, Ren. I have loved you since the moment you walked into that hall with trembling hands and quiet courage. The words hit her like a wave, warm and overwhelming and utterly unexpected. No one had ever said those words to her, not once, in 23 years of existence. I don't know if I know how to love, she admitted. I don't know if I have the capacity for it. But I feel something for you, Kaylin. Something that makes me want to try. Something that makes me want to be brave. Then that's enough. He kissed her forehead. Love isn't something you learn overnight. It's something that grows, day by day, through small moments and shared experiences. I'm not asking you to love me back right now. I'm just asking you to stay, to give us a chance. I'll stay. She said it without hesitation. I'll stay for as long as you want me. Forever, then. His arms tightened around her. Because I'm never letting you go. Outside, the moon rose over the mountains, casting silver light across the snow. Inside, wrapped in the arms of a king who loved her, Wren finally understood what it meant to be safe. Not just physically safe, not just protected from harm. Safe enough to hope, safe enough to feel, safe enough to imagine a future where she was more than what she had been. She fell asleep with a smile on her face and Kaelin's heartbeat in her ear, and she dreamed of nothing at all. The message arrived 3 weeks later. Wren was in the library when Kaelin found her, curled up in a window seat with a book in her lap. She had discovered she loved reading, loved losing herself in stories of adventure and romance, loved the way words could transport her to places she had never been. Kaelin had given her free rein of his collection, and she had been working her way through it with voracious enthusiasm. But the look on his face when he entered made her set the book aside immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked. He crossed to her, holding out a letter. The seal was broken, the paper crumpled as if it had been gripped too tightly. This came from the Eastern Territories, from Lord Brennan. Wren's stomach dropped. She took the letter with trembling hands, the old trembling, the fearful kind she thought she had left behind, and forced herself to read. The words blurred together at first. Legal language, formal phrases, demands wrapped in politeness. But the message beneath was clear enough. Lord Brennan was challenging the claim. He argued that Wren had been bound to his household by contract, an indentured servitude agreement signed when she was too young to understand what she was agreeing to. He claimed that Kaelin had stolen his property and demanded her return, along with compensation for the insult to his honor. "He can't do this." Wren's voice came out thin, strangled. "Can he? He can't. He's trying." Kaelin's voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the fury beneath. "The contract he references is real. I've had my advisors look into it. Your parents sold you to him when you were 7 years old, and the agreement stipulates that you belong to his household until he releases you or until you die." The room tilted. Wren remembered that day, remembered being handed over to strangers, remembered her mother's tear-streaked face and her father's shame. She had been told she was going to a better place, that Lord Brennan would take care of her. She had believed them. She had been 7 years old, and she had believed them. "So, I'm still his?" The words tasted like ash. "Even after everything, even after you claimed me, I'm still—" "No." Kaelin crouched before her, taking her face in his hands. "You are not his. You are mine. And no contract, no matter how old, will change that." "But the law—" "The law can be challenged. The law can be changed." His eyes blazed silver. "Do you think I would let some piece of paper take you away from me? Do you think I would hand you back to a man who treated you like property for 16 years? What are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Lord Brennan wants to make this a legal matter? Fine. We'll fight it in the courts. But if that fails, if some judge decides that a contract signed by desperate parents overrides a mate bond, then I will ride to the Eastern Territories myself and tear Lord Brennan apart with my bare hands." Wren's breath caught. "You would start a war for me?" "I would burn the world for you." He said it without hesitation, without hyperbole, like it was simply a fact, as obvious as the sun rising in the east. You are my mate, my queen, my heart. There is nothing I wouldn't do to keep you safe. She kissed him then, desperate and fierce and full of a love she was only beginning to understand. He responded in kind, pulling her close, holding her like she was something precious that might be snatched away at any moment. When they finally broke apart, she was shaking again. But this time, it wasn't from fear. "Tell me what to do," she said. "Tell me how to fight this." Something shifted in his expression. Pride, perhaps, or admiration. "You want to fight? I'm tired of running. I'm tired of cowering. I'm tired of letting men like Lord Brennan control my life." She straightened her spine, feeling something new settle into place inside her, something strong, something fierce. "I'm not the same girl who trembled when she brought you water. You've shown me what I can be. Now I want to prove it." Kaelan smiled, a real smile, warm and fierce and utterly devoted. "Then we fight together, as equals, as mates." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal councils and strategic meetings. Wren sat at Kaelan's side through all of them, listening, learning, occasionally offering observations that made the advisors pause and reconsider. Her Omega instincts, the ones she had spent her whole life trying to suppress, turned out to be invaluable. She could read the room in ways the Alphas couldn't, could sense when someone was lying, when alliances were shifting, when a particular approach would backfire. "You're a natural," Kaelan told her one night, after a particularly grueling session. "My council is terrified of you." "Terrified of an Omega?" "Terrified of a queen who sees through their games." He pulled her into his lap, nuzzling her neck. "They're not used to being outmaneuvered by someone they dismissed as weak." "I was weak." "You were never weak." He nipped at her throat, making her gasp. "You were surviving. There's a difference." The court date arrived on a grey morning in early spring. Lord Brennan had travelled to the Northern Kingdom himself, bringing a contingent of lawyers and witnesses to press his claim. Wren saw him for the first time since that night in the Great Hall, and something cold settled in her stomach. He looked the same, arrogant, cruel. His eyes found her across the courtroom, and his lip curled with familiar contempt. But Wren didn't look away, didn't bow her head, didn't tremble. She held his gaze until he was the one who looked away. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Lord Brennan's lawyers argued precedent and property law. Kaelan's lawyers argued that mate bonds superseded all other contracts, that an agreement signed by a child could not be considered binding, that the treatment Wren had endured constituted a breach of the original terms. But in the end, it was Wren herself who turned the tide. "May I speak?" she asked, rising from her seat. The judge, an elderly lichen with keen eyes, nodded slowly. "The court recognizes the Queen of the Northern Realm." Queen. The word still felt strange on her tongue, but she didn't let that show. "I was 7 years old when my parents sold me to Lord Brennan," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I was told I was going to a better life. Instead, I spent 16 years being beaten, starved, and treated as less than human. I was taught that I had no worth except what I could provide through service. I was taught that my pain didn't matter, that my voice didn't matter, that I didn't matter." She turned to face Lord Brennan directly. He shifted in his seat, his arrogance faltering. "But I do matter," Wren continued. "I matter to myself, I matter to my mate, and I matter to this kingdom, which has shown me what it means to be valued." She turned back to the judge. "Lord Brennan claims I am his property, but I am not property. I am a person. I am a queen, and I will not go back." The courtroom was silent. Even Lord Brennan's lawyers had nothing to say. The judge deliberated for less than an hour. When he returned, his verdict was absolute. The contract was void. Wren belonged to no one but herself, and to the mate she had chosen. Lord Brennan's roar of fury echoed through the chamber, but Caelan's guards were already moving, escorting him out before he could cause a scene. As he was dragged past Wren, he spat at her feet. "You're nothing," he snarled. "You're an Omega. You'll always be nothing." Wren looked at him. This man who had terrorized her for 16 years, who had made her believe she was worthless, who had tried to reclaim her like a lost piece of furniture. And she smiled. "I'm the queen of the Northern Realm," she said quietly, "and you are nothing to me anymore." They hauled him away, still cursing, still raging. But his words couldn't touch her now. Nothing he said could touch her now. She was free. The wedding was held on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Wren stood before a mirror in the Queen's chambers, watching as attendants fussed with her gown, silver silk that caught the light like moonbeams, embroidered with tiny wolves along the hem. Her dark hair had been woven with white flowers, and a crown of silver and sapphires rested on her head. She looked like a queen. She felt like one too. "You're stunning." She turned to find Caelan in the doorway, resplendent in black and silver, his eyes blazing with that familiar combination of fierceness and tenderness that still made her heart race. "You're not supposed to see me before the ceremony," she said, but she was smiling. "I've never been good at following rules." He crossed the room and took her hands in his. "Especially when my mate is involved." 6 months had passed since that day in the courtroom. 6 months of learning what it meant to be a queen, a partner, a woman worthy of love. There had been challenges. Nobles who questioned her authority. Foreign dignitaries who looked at her with barely concealed disdain. Moments when the old fears resurfaced and she wanted to hide. But through all of it, Caelan had been beside her. Patient, steady, unwavering in his belief that she belonged at his side. And slowly, impossibly, she had begun to believe it too. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day you asked me why I trembled." She squeezed his hands. "I just didn't know it yet." The ceremony was held in the great hall of the castle, packed with nobles and common folk alike. Word had spread throughout the kingdom about their queen, the Omega who had been treated as nothing, who had found her mate in the most powerful alpha alive, who had stood before a court and declared her own worth. The people loved her. They loved that she came from nothing. They loved that she had survived. But more than that, they loved that she had changed things. In the months since the court ruling, Wren had worked with Caelan to pass new laws protecting Omegas throughout the kingdom. Indentured servitude contracts involving children were now illegal. Abuse of Omegas was punishable by severe penalties. And every Omega in the realm now had the right to refuse a bond they didn't want. A right that had never existed before. "You've done more for our people in 6 months than most rulers do in a lifetime," Caelan had told her when the laws were formally enacted. "You're changing the world, Wren." "I'm just making sure no one else has to live the way I did," she had replied. "No child should be sold. No Omega should be treated as property. If I can prevent even one person from suffering what I suffered, then everything was worth it." Now, walking down the aisle toward the man she loved, Wren felt the weight of that mission settle into her bones. She was not just marrying a king, she was becoming a symbol, a beacon of hope for every Omega who had been told they were worthless, every child who had been sold by desperate parents, every person who had been crushed beneath the heel of those more powerful. If she could rise, so could they. The vows were ancient, spoken in the old tongue of the Lycan people. But when the formal words were done, Kaelin added his own. I take you as my wife, my mate, my queen, he said, his voice carrying through the hall. I vow to protect you, to honor you, to stand beside you in all things. But more than that, his voice roughened with emotion. I vow to remind you every single day of how much you are worth. You came to me trembling, and I watched you find your strength. You came to me broken, and I watched you become whole. You are the bravest person I have ever known, Wren, and I am honored beyond measure to call you mine. Wren's eyes burned with tears, but she didn't look away. I take you as my husband, my mate, my king. I vow to stand beside you, to support you, to love you with everything I have. 6 months ago, I didn't know what love was. I didn't know I was capable of it. But you showed me. You showed me that I was worth loving, worth protecting, worth cherishing. You gave me a life I never dared to dream of. She paused, swallowing hard. I will spend the rest of my days being grateful for you, and I will spend the rest of my days making sure you never regret choosing me. I could never regret you, he murmured. Not in 1,000 years. Not in 10,000. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and the hall erupted in cheers. The feast that followed was magnificent. Food and wine and music that lasted well into the night. Wren sat beside Kaelin at the head table, accepting congratulations from an endless stream of well-wishers. Lords and ladies who had once looked at her with contempt now bowed their heads in respect. Omegas from throughout the kingdom approached her with tears in their eyes, thanking her for the laws she had championed, for the hope she had given them. You're a hero to them, Kaelin observed quietly, watching as another young Omega walked away from their table with shining eyes. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who survived. That's what makes you a hero. He took her hand under the table. You didn't just survive, Wren. You thrived. And now you're showing others they can too. Later that night, in the privacy of their chambers, Kaelin held her close and whispered promises against her skin. He told her she was beautiful, told her she was strong, told her he would spend every day of his eternal life making sure she knew how cherished she was. Wren fell asleep in his arms, wrapped in warmth and safety, and a love she had never imagined possible. She dreamed of wolves running free beneath a silver moon. 1 year later, Wren stood on the balcony of the Queen's chambers, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Her kingdom now, as much as his. In her arms, a newborn son slept peacefully. Dark hair, pale grey eyes, the perfect blend of both his parents. Kaelin came up behind her, wrapping his arms around them both. You're brooding, he said. I'm reflecting. There's a difference. And what are you reflecting on? She leaned back into his warmth, feeling their sun stir against her chest. I was thinking about the day we met, how terrified I was, how certain I was that you would hurt me, like everyone else had. And now I can't imagine being afraid of you. She tilted her head back to look at him. Now I can't imagine my life without you. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You never have to. I'm yours, Wren, forever. And I'm yours. She looked down at their son, watching his tiny chest rise and fall. We both are. I've been thinking about names, Kaelin said softly. For him, I'd like to call him Rowan. It means strength. And I want our son to grow up knowing that strength isn't about power or dominance. It's about surviving, enduring, rising despite everything the world throws at you. He paused, just like his mother. Wren's eyes filled with tears. Rowan, I love it. Then Rowan it is. He held them tighter. Prince Rowan of the Northern Realm, son of the bravest queen this kingdom has ever known. She laughed through her tears. I'm not brave. You're just the woman who trembled bringing water to a king and ended up changing the world. He turned her in his arms, careful not to disturb their sleeping son. You're just the Omega who refused to be nothing, who stood before a court and declared her own worth, who gave hope to thousands of people who thought they had none. I had help. You had strength. The help just gave you a place to use it. Wren looked at him. This ancient king who had seen something in her that she couldn't see in herself, who had claimed her, protected her, loved her with a ferocity that still took her breath away, who had given her a son, a kingdom, a purpose. I love you, she said. I didn't know what that word meant before you. I didn't know it was something I could feel. But I feel it now, Kaelin. Every day. Every moment. I love you more than I ever thought possible. And I love you. He kissed her softly. My mate, my queen, my everything. The sun continued to rise, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose. In her arms, Rowan stirred and yawned, his tiny hand finding his father's finger and gripping tight. Wren smiled. She had spent 23 years trembling. 23 years being told she was nothing, believing she was nothing, expecting nothing from her life except survival. But the Lycan King had looked at her and seen something different, had seen courage where others saw weakness, had seen treasure where others saw trash. She was no longer the Omega who trembled bringing water to a king. She was a queen, a mother, a woman who had learned her own worth, and she would never tremble again.